What's up, everybody? I'm David Hain. Welcome to episode 291 of the A to D from Addict to Disciple podcast. I want to say a big welcome to our new listeners from the country of Iran. That brings our total up to 78 countries. I just want to thank you so much to those of you who have shared episodes with your friends, and I want to encourage the listeners to like, subscribe, follow, and share with your friends. Today's episode is number 291 of the A to D from Addict to Disciple podcast, and it's entitled Sweet Tooth. This episode is in response to a couple of weeks ago when I got comments talking about chemical imbalances and food addictions and eating disorders and things like that. And I opened it up for people to send me some messages, and overwhelmingly all the messages had to do with the sugar addiction. So I've entitled this episode Sweet Tooth. We're going to look at having a sweet tooth, and I'll use that interchangeably with the phrase sugar addiction. And we're going to see how that ties into you. So if you're not one who sees themselves with a sugar addiction or a sweet tooth, I encourage you to listen anyway, because it will relate. I'm sure you'll find something in there to either amuse you or to identify with. Let's start with what's the meaning of sweet tooth. Well, someone with a sweet tooth prefers sweet or sugary foods versus savory foods. And a quote that I would give people with that preference is, "Life is short, eat desserts first." A second aspect of having a sweet tooth is preferring sweet foods versus healthy foods. And a sort of bumper sticker quote I'll give you for that category is, "Donut worry, be happy." Got it? Donut worry, be happy. And another aspect of having a sweet tooth is you could be someone who always leaves room for dessert. You cut back on how much you eat of the main course, the savory items, because you're there leaving room for the dessert. And your quote could be, "I'm just here for the dessert and the good vibes." One other thing I'd like to point out, I've had many of the people who contacted me say, "I blame my dad for my sweet tooth because he would always take me out for ice cream or candy at the candy store as a treat or as a reward." And I think that's where it's all started. That's where my addiction started. Well, sugar does not qualify under the DSM-5 as an addiction substance. So they would not view a sweet tooth as a sugar addiction or as a clinical addiction. But I want to say, it can create a dependence-like state, just like other substances. And this is evidenced by intense cravings where you might be going after sugary food, sugary drinks, even though you're not hungry or thirsty. Or compulsive eating, where you're not hungry, but it's there. It's sitting in front of you and it's available. So you just take it. It's there. The opportunity's present. And impulsively or compulsively, you just jump right into it. And the compulsion really sets in where you can't just eat one. Your loss of control is sort of running rampant, and next thing you know, you're binge eating. Also, with a sweet tooth, it's easy to build up tolerance, where all of a sudden you realize you need more and more sugar to get the same high, to get the same satisfaction, to get the same as you once did. This can be caused by some of the actions of sugar in our body. When we eat sugar, it can delay the release of a chemical called acetylcholine, which is the thing that signals from our brain that we're full and we don't have to eat anymore. And sugar by nature delays that signal. Some of you may also have found out, if you decide to get off of sugar, whether it's for a fast or whether you're just trying to get control of the situation again, that your emotions kick in. You get irritable or anxious, or physically you feel fatigue or headaches. So all these things are very similar to other substances that are recognizably addictive substances. So why sugar? Why am I doing this on sugar, and why do we feel this addictive nature to it? Well, again, from a chemical standpoint, sugars trigger the release of dopamine in the brain. And dopamine, as you probably know, is associated with pleasure and reward. So when we eat sugar, the dopamine's released. When we see it, when we think about it, the dopamine is released and pleasure begins. Sugar is also a fast digestion food, and this leads to a quick energy boost. And this is very similar to the instant gratification we can feel in a substance use disorder. And from that, sugar can also become our comfort food, where we use it to cope with our emotions, with stress and anxiety or boredom and things like that. It can also numb the pain of our past trauma. And for many of you, I'm sure your sweet tooth developed as a result of turning to sugary foods to numb the pain of your trauma. And then it became the comfort food for a variety of emotions. Sugar can also provide an escape from our now as our comfort food, from our current situation. And as I said, for those of you who said, my dad is the one I blame, he introduced me to it, it can sort of take us back to the feelings of warmth and nostalgia, the happy memories of home and of our dad. And that in itself can make it a comfort food. But our sugar cravings can be influenced by stress hormones that are present. And our body begins to seek sugar as a temporary way to cope with stress. So there's a lot at play here. And I'd like to give a quote by Maria Sharapova, the professional tennis player, who once said, "I have a very big sweet tooth. I love treating myself to something that I wouldn't necessarily eat during the tournament, such as a nice sized cake." You got that? So we talked about this, take you back to the feelings of warmth and nostalgia, the happy memories. She treats herself to a nice sized cake, not just a slice of cake, a nice sized cake. After the tennis tournament's over, she realizes that she has a big sweet tooth, but she keeps it under control for her performance in her occupation as a tennis pro. I guess to sum all this up, we can get stuck in this cycle of a sweet tooth, much as other addictions, where we have the impulse, we give in to the impulse because it's growing as a craving, stronger and stronger. When we give in, the compulsivity sets in and we can't just have one. The instant gratification sets in, but the high is quick. And then we begin to crash. And when we crash, the cycle starts all over again. And often, if you've got an addiction to sugar, if you've got this sweet tooth, you may also be battling what it's doing to your body. The consequences could be weight gain, could be blood pressure, could be a variety of things. And I'll focus on weight gain for an example, where part of the vicious cycle of this is the scale can begin to lie to us. We can see that we've gained weight, so we decide to cut back on the sugar. And the scale might say we've lost a few pounds, but we look and we didn't lose them where we wanted to, so we figure the scale must be lying. Or the scale says that you weigh the same and you're looking and you see some changes in you. And then on top of that, we could lose 10 or 20 pounds and our friends don't notice. So this vicious cycle where once we begin to say this consequence is too much for me, I need to change, it's hard to find the affirmation and the reinforcement and encouragement to stick with it. And like often we talk about, this is a journey. If you've got a sweet tooth, to get this situation changed, it's a journey, not an overnight thing. I think the key to beginning is to realize I have an unhealthy relationship, even a toxic relationship with sugar, and I need help to build a healthy relationship with sugar and all food. And I need to develop a self-esteem for my physical appearance. And I like to close with a quote by American author Glennon Doyle, who said, "Stop spending all day obsessing, cursing, perfecting your body like it's all you've got to offer the world. Your body is not your art, it's your paintbrush." Awesome. Thanks for listening to today's episode of the Addict to Disciple podcast. If you'd like to reach out and contact me, you can do so through the link in this podcast, or you can send me an email at davidfroma2d@gmail.com, or go to my website, www.froma2d.org, and click on the contact page. Keep listening to future podcast episodes, and as always, stay safe and stay resilient.